All right, guys, can you hear me now? Apologies if you couldn't hear me. All right, perfect. Cool. I was saying, welcome to your finance consultancy space for the EB applications, because from what I understand, that all of you are looking to apply to the EB as LCVPSF. First and foremost, it's a smart decision that you made. Hey, Suraj. All right. So yeah, like I said, this is going to be a quick I've had about 20, 25 slides, and I've tried to prepare, give you the basics as to what exactly goes in behind the life of VPF, or what exactly it is to be a VPF on local level. I mean, I was a VPF last year as well. So, I mean, like I said, this is going to be more of just basic information that I feel you guys should be aware of, or what exactly the JD is, or what exactly does it mean to be VPF, and what is your job role per se require you to do, and just a basic understanding of what ISEC India's financial model is, because that's extremely crucial for you to understand as you keep progressing on into the role that you're applying for, right? So, be in mind, I haven't per se covered every single point that's extremely, extremely important for you to be aware of. I have for sure mentioned all of these points through the course of the presentation itself. So, I would really, really recommend that you guys note down all your questions. Don't necessarily ask them right in the middle of the presentation, but let's ensure that at the end of the presentation, because there's going to be a specific space for questions, is when you guys are per se putting these questions down in the chat box on the right, and I will be answering them at the question and answer space. Right? Cool. Can we proceed? Are we good to go? Quickly, if you guys are going to reply on the chat. All right. Yep. Cool. Good to go. Perfect. Cool. Just a quick understanding of what exactly is going to be in store over the course of the next 45 minutes out of space is going to be, introduction to me. I am the MCPF for ISEC India for the 1920, and I am going to be handling the commission. So essentially, I'm handling the finance commission right now, and I will be handling potentially any of you that get onto the EB as VPSF. And so it's extremely important that we are aware of who we are and what we do. And just a quick 2 minute get to know about what exactly my role has been so far and what exactly I do. Then a very basic understanding of what the concept of finance it is in general, because finance is one of those roles that you essentially apply for a lot of technical knowledge. You learn a lot of these specific things that you can essentially directly or indirectly use outside in your day-to-day life. So just a quick understanding of what exactly is it to mean to be in finance. And it's important for you guys to understand that, because a lot of us don't quite understand the fact that what we do in ISEC and in terms of finances is actually not 100% or not absolutely to every single age applicable outside, but it's extremely close to financial modeling and financial analytics that we can do here. So just to quite draw the parallel between what exactly finance is outside and what exactly it is, or what does it mean to be a VPF or handle finance in ISEC. What is the job description of a VPF? What exactly, if at all I am a VPF, what exactly am I supposed to do? What my skills are? What my behaviors needs to be? What are things that I need to know? So on and so forth. Moving on, just the basic requirements to know about before applying, and what are the skills that will give me an advantage in the application process. So essentially, through the course of the presentation you will also understand is the fact that I have mentioned certain things that you can use per se in understanding what exactly does a VPF do in terms of on a day-to-day basis, or how does a VPF think, or how exactly does a VPF approach these certain situation, and what sort of planning and execution of these plans does a VPF have to do. And I understand that as members of the organization or finance managers, even for that matter, who haven't essentially worked very, very closely with VPSF, some of you are at a disadvantage in understanding what exactly is it that your VPSF are doing right now. So I have taken the liberty of putting down certain things that you guys can catch up on. And if at all, like I said, is there anything that you guys know, feel free to drop a question at the end. And like I said, there will be a question answer space at the end of this presentation. Cool. Quickly moving on. My name is Suraj. I am 21 years old. I am from Chennai. I was VP of ISEC in Chennai last year. I was recruited in Jan 2019. My favorite color happens to be green for no specific reason. And my favorite conference so far has been NLDS 2017. So just to quickly talk about, I was a VPF last year in Chennai as well. So I completely understand the kind of problems or the queries that VPSF actually might go through, or what exactly does the thought process that VPF starts the term with, what sort of thought process are they in the middle of the term, and what are the skills that, because, and to be all honest, I did not essentially apply to be a VPF. I applied to be another portfolio, but then I was selected to be VPF. So through the course of the experiences when I learned these knowledge and skills, and and these tips and tricks you essentially use for your VPF term. So I mean, I learned it more of on the job, which is why I mean you can feel free to ask me questions that, because I understand a lot of you aren't essentially coming from a finance background. So don't worry, I'm on your team, and we can see where these questions go. Cool. Moving on. What does it mean to be finance, right? Just to quickly read out what's on your screen. Office of Vice President for Finance provides critical financial and administrative services in the areas of financial strategy, financial and capital planning, annual budgeting, receipt and disbursement of funds, accounting, procurement, and asset management, right? So essentially, this is like in one line how exactly I would define what exactly a VPF or a CFO or a Vice President Finance outside ISEC does in their daily corporate life. So if you were to read the statement again, it is or not too far away. It is I would define how what we do here in ISEC and what it is that a local level VPSF do. So if you were to read it again, for example, provides critical financial and administrative services. So as a VPF, you are always monitoring the budget, always monitoring the finances and the financial health of the local committee. You are always, because essentially finances and HR are the two big pillars that define how healthy an organization is, because your the levels of equity or the levels of money that you are having, or ability to purchase or purchasing power, and essentially these things define how healthy you are, or what sort of position or what sort of stance you can be having as an entity, which is why finance is one of the biggest crucial drivers of health in every entity. And as VPSF, you are more like these custodians or bearers of the fact that you're protecting the health or improving the health rather year on year of every LC. And being a part of VPF also in some LCs is coming down with an administrative requirement as well. How are you governing and how are you monitoring and handling the assets and handling the office, or handling the services, handling the payments, the banks, the administrative side of running an entity as well. You obviously are driving financial strategy, and the biggest way that you are driving financial strategy is through your budget in itself. Because essentially your budget is a culmination of what the entity's plans for the year are going to be. But again, when through the course of the planning process or through the course of your term itself, VPSF have a very, very strategic role in where they are, because of the numbers that they're presenting on the table and because of the facts that certain things need to be executed through the budget in itself. Can you guys hear me? I just read a comment said not audible. All right, perfect. Like I said, you guys do and essentially end up playing a very strategic role, which is in the LCs in itself. So, because at the end of the day, you are presenting the numbers that are on the budget, or the numbers that the LC has commonly agreed, or the EB you have commonly agreed to do. And say anything that is coming out of your strategy, anything that's coming out of what you collectively need to do as an LC, is coming from the fact that you are then monitoring or governing, and on the basis of certain numbers and on the basis of certain plans that we have commonly agreed, providing strategy like something is feasible, something is not feasible, something is risky, something is not risky, understanding the budget and the execution, and where exactly your financial health or legal health of the entity is right now, which is why it's extremely strategic as a role as well. And again, annual budgeting, receipt and invoice all your stakeholders, which is your EPs, your clients, your recruitment members that come in, budgeting and receipting and invoicing for these members. Disbursement of funds is essentially the reimbursements that the VPSF handle. Accounting is per se when you are understanding the transactions and understanding the implication of these transactions on the accounting side, of how exactly that we account in ISEC India as well. And procurement and asset management is essentially you purchase, for example, renting an office or renting furniture, or getting a TV in the office, or for example, where necessary, getting a printer, officing. So essentially, asset and assets management and procurement of these things is something that VPSF do as well. And this is again me drawing parallels to what a VPF outside ISEC does with regards to in an ISEC context. And just to quickly read what's given here as well. A VPF and ISEC handles and monitors the budget execution and is responsible for the financial planning and management along with the legal and local governance in the LCs. The VPF plays a strategic role in the systematic planning and financial consequences of the LC. Right? Gaurav Khemka, can you hear me? It says for some reason you feel it's paused. All right, perfect. I mean, guys, there might be some technical issues from your end. I mean, if the majority of you are able to hear, please do check your internet connections. From my end, it's all good to go. Cool. Quickly moving on. So just to give you some sort of context, The financial aspect of it is, I mean, I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but finance also has something called finance standards, which are essentially 6 finance standards that are set up by ISEC International, which are then followed on a local level in itself. So I'm going to be giving you a lot of these words and keywords and per se ideas that you guys haven't been essentially exposed to before. So please do note these things down. And at the end of the space in itself, I can drop you some links, or I can put you on to people that you can reach. So, I mean, all of you have VPSF on a local level itself. So the idea is for you to then understand these things here and reach out to these people and understand from them what exactly, if you're not able to per se get something from this particular call, right? Cool. Like I said, VPF and ISEC handles the budget and monitors the budget execution. And like I said, local and legal governance. VPF plays a strategic role in the systematic planning and consequences of the LC. Cool. Quickly moving on. Cool. This is, again, like I said, the JD of the LCVP Finance. Cool. Just a profile description: young people with knowledge or interest in financial aspects of an organization, interested in managing business budgets and deal with legalities. Now, again, I understand that, some of us don't come from finance background. Some of us don't go understand what is it to be a VPF, which is why it's not per se the only criteria wherein which you can be a VPF is if you have some sort of business background or some sort of interest in it. I mean, essentially, these are prerequisites or skills that can go a long way in the process of being a VPF. But it's extremely important that you guys understand that these are not the deal breakers or the game changers. If you don't per se fall into this particular category, you can't be a particular VPF. This is just ideal case scenarios that we're talking about. Cool. The job description itself overall is oversee all finance related matters where depth and scope is related to the size of LC, create financial plans as defined by the LC realities, direct finance strategies, analyze, forecast, and budget management, direct all aspects of accounting operations such as receivables, payables, payroll, and financial reporting, investment strategies and tracking ROI, organizational risk and mitigation, local finance and entity governance, training and education members, team size implementation, department management, administration of your LCs, EBM synergies, national commissions, national audits, right? And these are per se the daily job descriptions that a VPF has on a daily basis. You can obviously screenshot this or keep these things in mind every time, I mean, you're progressing on using it for your application. But like I said, more or less the point of this call is to address any questions or queries that you guys already have pre-existing. So this is something that is just additional thing that I'm trying to remind you guys or revisit you guys that you might have probably forgotten through the course of your application. Again, how do you know as a VPF that you are performing, or what are your key performance indicators as a VPF, right? The percentage budget execution is something which per se is not directly as a cause of what a VPF is doing, but is a lot of it comes under the control of the VPF or how the VPF is controlling the budget. Because if I'm having a poor budget versus actuals in the first 2-3 months, I then as a VPF need to take a strategic decision, understand that certain expenses cannot be made, certain incomes are budgeted too high, certain things or certain plans are not quite as feasible as we thought they were, right? So as VPF, we always have to play that sort of a role where we are able to monitor and play a sort of strategic role that I've been mentioning so far. So essentially, a budget execution to some extent still comes under the key performance indicator as a VPF. Your number of monthly audits and reporting that you do, which is the national audits that we have, and how often are you filling and how accurately are you filling these audits. Percentage investments is how much exactly am I investing into a certain portfolio, and what exactly is my return on investment. You can calculate return on investment in multiple ways. The simplest way is how much amount of money you received due to the money you investing in that particular field. It's a simple division. You guys can do that. Tracking product finances. What exactly is the financial position of my product in my LC at this point in time? What exactly is the sustainability level of this product in this LC at this point in time? LC financial plan and monthly evaluation. Cash flow management. What exactly is cash flow management, right? Cash flow management is essentially understanding that at some point, to make certain expenses, I need to have certain income at this point in time. For example, I understand that I will have IGT receivables, right? My receivables in IGT might be 2 lakhs, but at the same time, I know that I have to make an admin payment of 1 lakh that's pending right now. So, cash flow management is essentially understanding when are you going to get what source of income, and when are you going to have what source of expense, and trying to match out entirely. Because at the end of the day, on the budget, we obviously have budgeted income and budgeted expense. But what's extremely important to understand is that these amounts come in at different times of the month in itself. For example, my income on OGV approval will come in at the time I'm putting on approval. but my expense for, say, this OGV attraction is, for example, an on-ground thing is going to happen pre the approval money coming in. So as a VPF, you always need to be evaluating the expenses 10 steps forward and understanding, okay, if these are the expenses I need to do, what is my cash flow right now? Does my cash flow, does my current income allow this potential future expense before I need to depend on any potential income in the future? So managing that, understanding the balance between how much is it that I need to spend right now to get a potential income. So it's not at the end of the day not about how much income I'm getting, how much expense I'm getting. It's about maintaining that balance and in a timely period, understanding when what sort of expenses happen. Uh, Financial process execution and evolution, right? So essentially what financial processes are, or what exactly your key performance indicator for financial processes are going to be the finance standards in itself, because the finance standards are something that talking directly about what sort of processes or what sort of implementation of the sustainability, auditing, reporting, budgeting, accounting, legal, which are the six finance standards, are being implemented on ground, and how much of compliance or how much of it that you are per se executing every single part of it. So the finance standards, I mean, this year we have further dwelled down. So how we essentially go about auditing is that we have an auditing form which asks a series of about 40 to 50 questions, and each of these questions is a yes or no, or put in a number or input some details, and based on your answers, your score is then evaluated that if you are complying or not complying with certain finance standards. Now, yes, I'm aware that not every single one of us here is completely aware of what the finance standards are, which is why, like I mentioned earlier in the call, feel free to reach out to me. I can give you my WhatsApp number at the end, or I can give you my email, or your current VP's FN itself, and they will be for sure able to guide you on or give you some sort of material or resource as to what exactly finance standards are, right? So that's about finance standards. Cool. Event financial management, guys. As VP's F, you are again also directly responsible for the financial execution or the budget execution of different events that we have. For example, a BD event or a recruitment or a YSF, or these events that we are happening obviously need to have a separate budget. These events obviously are a part of the annual budget that we prepare for every LC. But as a VPF, you need to ensure that every event is profitable and every event is having a separate budget. So as a VPF, you also need to understand that your performance is also going to be evaluated on how well or how successful or how financially capable these events are. And that is something that you will obviously keep tracking yourself, because every single budget that you maintain separately needs to have a budget execution, a budget planning. You need to sit down with your VP BD, sit down with your VP PM, sit down with your LCP, understand what is the implication of this event. Does this event make sense? Do I need to go ahead with this event? Can I afford this level of profitability? These are things that you discuss in and around every event, which is extremely, extremely important for you as VPs F to understand that what sort of objective does this event have, and what sort of financial repercussion is this event going to have. For example, if I'm going to be running a GGR, if I'm going to be running a marathon, it is my BD's plan to have secondary source of income, right? So how can I, as a VPF, ensure that my budget is planned in such a way where my profits are coming from this event, and that's extremely important for the LC. Whereas something like an ASD or an annual stakeholders dinner is something that we do, but we're not expecting, say, the highest amount of profits. We're not expecting somewhere around 5-6 lakhs of profit. We're expecting to, probably have a comfortable 60, 70 or 1,000 or 1 lakh profit where we are able to run these events. So as VPSF, you need to monitor these different events differently and understand that this event has this sort of financial repercussion in my LC, and this is what my LC needs right now. Sometimes it's extremely important to understand that your LC cannot afford to run an event right now, which is not per se making money or not in the right or financial objective of the LC. So event financial management comes in and becomes extremely crucial for you. Then some LCs, I understand, have a process of running finances where they have finance managers, where they have, because of the size of the LC and because of the magnitude of or volume of operations that they do, they have members who are acting as on a dual role as finance managers, and the KPI obviously is going to be tracking these people and ensuring that they are performing and functioning as a finance department in itself. Cool. That was, you guys can obviously take screenshots and more or less read about this later on as well. And like I said, reach out to different people. But most importantly, what exactly is the measure of success? How exactly do I know is a VPF doing good? Is, again, like I said, budget versus actual. What exactly is my B versus A? How much of my budget is being executed in the way I want it to be being executed? Both income and expenses and different parameters underneath. For example, your budget is the most powerful tool for you to do any analysis objectively, numerically, to understand that, okay, IGV income is at 56%, but IGV in expense is at 64%, which means you're drastically overspending in terms of proportion income. Yes, your profit might still be there because your income is budgeted higher than your expense, but as as a strategic decision, as a strategist in your organization, you cannot afford to have a imbalance or in proportion in the amount that you're agreeing to get, whereas you're agreeing to spend. So the budget versus actual as a concept in itself is extremely powerful for you to do any sort of analysis or any sort of understanding for your LCs. Reserves, right? So reserves is something that every LC is required to maintain and is required to fulfill as part of membership criteria as well for ISEC India. And the reserves at the end of the day are something which is a surplus, is something that is an extra amount that is essentially a profit, so your surplus that you're getting every year after making all your expenses, after paying all your debt, after paying all your recon, that you are putting into a separate account as a safety or a savings for your LC every year on year. So your MS could be, how much of money have I put in my reserves? How much of it is it feasible in my LC reality right now to put into the reserves? And how much is it that I'm targeting? And how much is it that I'm going to go ahead and do? Debt ratio essentially is, what is my equity? Equity by liability essentially is a debt ratio, right? So equity as a concept accounting is basically about how much money you have right now, which is your bank balance and your reserve balance and your cash in hand, divided by the amount of money you owe people. What are the liabilities that I have? Do I owe any externals? Do I owe any outsiders? Do I owe ISEC India Recon? What are the amounts that I owe? And the amount that I have divided by the amount that I owe is essentially my debt ratio. So if you look at a lot of LCs are in a negative debt ratio, where LCs have lesser money than they owe people, which is obviously very poor financial position to be in. So as a VPF, you always need to ensure that your debt ratio is of a particular level that you are setting for yourselves. I will always need to have this amount of surplus at any given point in time after clearing all my amounts, right? Core performance ratio is again talking about how much of my income is coming from per se my operations, right? So operations at the end of the day needs to contribute at least 70% of my income. Like that is the globally accepted norm that we have, where where operations needs to cover 70% of my income, and anything less than that is underperformance or underlying. Because hey, at the end of the day, we are here in the business of exchanges. We are here to perform certain exchanges, and that needs to be the core function of the organization. As VPs, we need to be supporting of that, which is why our core performance cannot at any given point in time be less than 0.7. So that's something that again is a measure of success, because at the end of the day, if your BD is over contributing, then you're not driving your operations well. And if you're not driving your operations well, then you're not doing your job as a VPF, or you're not doing it as a LC well as well. So core performance issues. That finance standards, like I already mentioned, is the compliance of the 6 finance standards, and how much exactly is it that you are complying with, on what sort of percentages do you have. Legal archives completion is something that you guys are aware of as MB members, as TLs. You guys are taking the documents or the legal documents that you're receiving from the MB members, and you are uploading them onto a particular space, or keeping them or storing them in the office, or uploading them on a drive, which is legal archives. Product sustainability is how many of our products are running in loss, how many of our products are making a profit, on what levels, how much of a profit per exchange am I making. These are certain parameters that you go ahead and set for yourself in the beginning of your term, and you essentially hold yourself accountable that every product ISEC IGV has to be level 2 sustainable for me, which means they are covering all my expenses minimum. At the end of the day, my profit, for example, profitability as OGX, if I'm investing so much amount of money into my ads, I need to ensure that my profitability in these profitability from the product is not getting affected. Because if my MB members have poor conversions, which is affecting my cost per lead, then the amount I'm investing per approval is also rising up, which is then affecting my profitability, which means I'm making lesser money than I am on every exchange. So these are things that you always hold yourself accountable to, always think about at any given point in time before you set any sort of profitability targets. LC sustainability, again, like I already mentioned. Asset creation, how much of it that you're creating in your reserves, how much of it that you're adding. ROI is again the return on investment that I'm getting for every rupee that I invested. This is the kind of ROI, which is basically smart investment, understanding the right channels for investing and going ahead with that, and leadership pipeline as well. So this is more or less a job description, KPI, and MOS of the VPF in itself. And moving on to what exactly is it required, or what exactly I would require to be a VPF is obviously, yes, it was obviously preferred that you have at least 3 quarters experience, you have at least 1 team leader experience. I mean, again, like I said, these are not per se the only reasons why you will not or get to be a VPF, but these are obviously prerequisites that we suggest and recommend that are extremely important. Availability of working hours, which is 24 hours per week. You need to attend all conferences, you need to attend all local forums, You need to be available for JBM transitions, recruitments. Basically, VPF needs to be everywhere, because at the end of the day, the VPF is the second most important person in the LC behind the LCP, and that person needs to be there and aware of what track every single thing that's happening in the LC, because that has a legal, a governance, or a financial implication on every single thing that the LC does. Competencies. What are things that or skills that you guys need to be equipping yourself, or things that you should be catching up on or not catching up on, or things that you should be aware of that skills are required to be a VPF? Is your finance basics, right? Which is understand how a basic budget works. What is it to be handle a budget? What is it like to account? How what sort of accounting processes do we have in ISEC India? ROI tracking. How well am I able to make a decision in terms of investing in a particular way and tracking the ROI? Am I able to do the basic math in calculating my ROI? Investment planning. How am I through a period of time structurally and systematically planning out what sort of investments need to happen in my LC? Being data analytical, survey analysis, Microsoft Excel, risk management, firefighting, negotiation, data management, problem solving, automation, data-driven, time management. Cool. A lot of it has is to do around being very analytical, data-driven, firefighting, negotiating, and time management, right? So these 5 skills I feel are the most per se important. Data. As a VPF, you are always exposed to a lot of numbers, lot of sheets, lot of data, everyone. So it's extremely important for you to be able to track and be able to be analytical in the way you approach data. Always base your decisions on data and understand that, okay, these numbers exist for a particular reason, and I will go ahead and make my decisions or be very data driven. Microsoft Excel, again, most of our work revolves around Google Sheets, so it's extremely important that you guys have understanding of how formulas work, basic understanding of what Excel is, what sheets do, how exactly our budget's made, how our tracker's made. You also then can go ahead and extremely important is firefighting. As an LC VPF, who's the legal responsible of the LC, you are always going to have challenges, or always going to have problems and situations wherein you have external problems. EPs are making problems, clients are making problems. There's a legal history at LC. The FRRO is being a problem. So you always need to be that person who is firefighting, who understands the situation, who's calm, composed, who is collected, who is able to understand that, hey, this is what the situation is, able to see things black and white, able to be very objective, and trying to develop these skills in myself. And these, again, guys, if these are skills that we don't essentially have as individual people even now, this is a perfect opportunity for you to develop these skills through the course of the VPF term that you might be. So don't look at the fact that, okay, if I don't have these things, I can't be a VPF. Again, problem solving, like I mentioned, you always need to be extremely solution oriented as a person. You always got to look at the problem in its entirety, understand objectively, and systematically break it down and solve it, rather than being very emotionally driven or all over the place about it. These are skills that go a long way in being a VPF. And obviously time management, because as a VPF, you have hundreds of things to do on a daily basis. And how exactly are you managing your time, and how exactly are you going about implementing and choosing and prioritizing the right things to do? Cool. The behaviors that I feel like you guys should instate in you, or develop, or should be having right now is, again, like I said, being strategic, understanding the strategic role that you have to play, and what exactly does strategy mean, and how do you as a VPF drive strategy. You obviously have to be extremely goal-oriented, budget-oriented, and to some extent a risk-taker as well. You need to be the navigator of the organization. You need to navigate through the hurdles, or the challenges, or the operations, or the slumps, or the positivity. Everything you need to navigate through the organization, because at the end of the day, you are second in line to the LCP, and you are then per se in charge of driving these concepts through the LC with the LCP through conversations and as an EB. So being solution-oriented, being extremely objective, black and white, strong-minded, and self-reliant, and again, navigator of the organization mentioned again. Cool. Behavior, again, according to ISEC values, is, again, first top most important is extremely solution-oriented, which is crisis management, sustainable decision-making process, ethical, transparent, trustworthy, and consistent. These are things, I understand it's a lot for you guys to soak in, but again, like I said, take a screenshot of these things that you feel are important, or you need to know again, or note down some questions that you want to do. At the end of the presentation, I will be sharing some sort of resources that I can, in terms of, try to send it on the chat box, or try and attach it somewhere over here, or I can send it to you guys, or I can make it available to the current finance commission, who can then drive that down to you. But more or less, this is the situation right now. Cool. Moving on. This is essentially the mind map of a VPF, which is essentially at any given point in time, the VPF is always thinking about these things, which is split into multiple decisions, right? Timelines, growth, governance, investment, asset creation, education, documentation, planning. Cool. So I'm quickly going to read out what exactly it is to be a VPF in these things. For example, timeline. You need to be your LC calendar needs to be in the back of your mind. You need to understand when exactly what events are there, when what deadlines are coming into place. You need to have your daily updates. So you're daily doing your budgeting, your accounting. You are quarterly submitting your GFP surveys. You are paying your recon. Your monthly your budget is being updated. You have your BOSS is being tracked. You have book submission, which you're doing to the MC, which is essentially invoicing and receipt of every single transaction that's happening. You also need to understand that your finance reports and ROI trackers need to be filled. Exactly what you need to be tracking your investments on a monthly basis, understanding what progress have they made, what progress have they not made, and your EB advisory, right, which is your growth, the strategic role that you play is always the quality assessment that you do, being very incentive oriented and being a CFO-esque behavior and being extremely sustainability driven, right? Governance, again, there's a lot of administrative governance that you do, which is legal, ethical, right things that need to happen in the LC, which is the thing that you take a stand as a VPF, which is your requirement as a job. You need to maintain and strengthen the contracts. You need to minimize legal exposure, which is minimizing the loopholes in which ISEC as an entity or ISEC in XYZ entity is exposed to any sort of legal risk with EPs, with clients, with FRROs, with any sort of external stakeholders. Basically doing the processes right, implementing, and being a person who's checking on the SOPs and understanding, okay, this needs to happen now, and this is how my job needs to per se go ahead. Compliance, the ISEC India compendium is your rule book. Is you are per se, you need to know the compendium in and out, because you are only going to know what's right and wrong if you know the compendium. You're only going to know if your LC is doing the right kind of things if you know the compendium through and through. So read the compendium, understand what is right, what is wrong, what the audits are, what exactly the different clauses are. Are you doing things right as an LC? What are the red flags? What are the possible challenges that you are not complying with the compendium? Because if you don't comply with the compendium, it's essentially like the rule book of ISEC India. Local level financial policy. What do you as a VPF establish in the beginning of your term as local level financial policies, and how exactly we're governing them? Some members cannot be reimbursed of a certain amount. Certain financial decisions that you take, investments, expansions, these things that you are solid about in the beginning of your term, how exactly you're going ahead and monitoring and governing them. Budget reviews, being a strategy role and understanding that if the budget is not executed in a certain way, or the financial plans are not being executed in such a way, certain things cannot happen. Investment creation, which is essentially your investment proposal, ROI tracking, EB and LC development funds, office infrastructure, auditing and legal, which is essentially complying with the national audits that come out every month. Education, ensuring that your MB members, that is the people who are coming after you, are educated, understand about finances, understand about product finances. What exactly is it that their product is in the current state? Are they contributing? Are they not contributing? Documentation, essentially ensuring that every single EP has their documentation done. They have the right kind of documents either maintained digitally or in the office. Is extremely important that you guys do that, because that mitigates legal exposure. When we have the insurance, when we have the tickets, when we have the passport, all these things scanned and kept ready with us, it is giving us a lot of advantage in the fact that come tomorrow a problem exists, we have these documents existing with us, these contracts that we can hold accountable the EPs and VPs and the clients. It's extremely important, because tomorrow something goes wrong and you don't have the contract copy, any EP, any client can just run us over and be like, hey, I didn't get this, so this is what I'm going to do. Planning, again, that's more or less the budgeting, forecasting of cash flows, like I earlier mentioned, and LC financial modeling and policies. Cool. Quickly moving on. Just things that, from here on, things that you need to know. You might know it, you might not know it. ISEC India is registered as a society under the Societies Act, which is why we have a tax. We are tax exempt from the from the income tax of India, but we do file our tax filings every single year, and that essentially because we are part of the Societies Act, we then don't essentially have to pay tax. So we file our audits. The income tax audits us, and then they don't ask us for in tax because we are tax exempt. Cool. The legalities of ISEC in India. Like I mentioned, we are a society registered. We have a PAN card, which is used to file all the TDS. For example, our clients sometimes cut TDS, so we have a PAN card that we give them, saying under this number you can file the TDS, which then comes back to ISEC India. From ISEC India is then given to the LCs on a 1 year basis. So, for example, TDS from 2 years back will come now. So we have a 2 year delay with the government that processes these TDSs. So that's something that you need to know. Cool. Just an idea of just to explain to you where exactly does the money go as VPF is you have your operational expenses, which if you guys haven't seen the budget so far, for example, it goes in printing, EP kits, stationery, flats, brokerage, appointment expenses. This is fairly old. Not every single expense still happens on a daily basis right now, but this is something that I felt is important for you guys to understand, that this is where the money is being spent, and these are different channels in which you can possibly spend your money. Administrative expenses, LCB stipend, office rent, LCMs, bank charges, office supplies, team days, cleaning, maintenance, electricity. The other place that where your money goes is alumni subsidies, department R&R, referral schemes, seeds that you might invest in, expansion visits that you have to do. Marketing is essentially, more or less has become digital in itself. So this is more or less is on-ground strategies, which is your on-ground investments or your content generation or your printing media. Your, for example, your PM investments is awards night, department days, inductions, attending summits to the MC, international conferences, IXP subsidies. All of these things are different avenues in which you can possibly spend, or your budget can be inclusive of. Cool. Quickly moving on to the last aspect of the entire thing before I quickly share on multiple resources that you guys can go through is the financial model of ISEC India. So it's important for you guys to understand that every single LC pays a certain amount of recon to ISEC India on every single exchange. Now, this amount is not fixed every quarter. This amount is dependent on the number of exchanges you do. So I'm going to quickly read through the slides. You guys can obviously search on YouTube ISEC India financial model, and you guys will get a very comprehensive and detailed analysis of what exactly the financial model is and what exactly per se it implies, or what the repercussions are on your daily finances. Cool. What is recon? Recon is the amount paid to the MC for the services provided. Recon is divided into three parts: your affiliation, exchange, and membership recon. So essentially, you pay one final amount, which is reflected on the internal liability tracker. But that then, just for your understanding, is essentially a split of three amounts, which is your affiliation. So affiliation is ISEC India pays an affiliation to ISEC International to use the ISEC brand and use the ISEC, be like a franchise, right? So we pay affiliation to ISEC International, and that is then split with all LCs in a very different proportion, which I will show you. So essentially, it takes into consideration LC realities and understand that some LCs will not be able to pay a certain high amount of affiliation, so then they are paying different levels of affiliation fee. Exchange recon is essentially the cost per exchange that is determined through the number of exchanges that we do every month, which I will explain to you how it's done. Multiplied with the number of exchanges that you're doing, because it's important to know that we charge recon on approvals for OGX and realizations for ISEX. We've done that because essentially our money or the source of income for the LC is on realization, because our EPs pay us on realization or our clients pay us on realization, so it doesn't make sense for us to pay on approvals. And for OGX, we get our money when we put up our approvals, so it makes sense to charge on approvals. And it's charged again, like I said, at the end of every quarter. Cool. Objectives: to infuse growth directly by higher profits, to evolve the state of financial management, to add an element of accountability in the National Association, to improve performance in all cycles, to increase accountability of the MC to its budget. These are the different objectives why the recon model exists. And the recon model is a direct relation of the MC budget. So the MC budget is prepared every year, and the numbers or the amounts are taken from the MC budget in itself. So the amounts are fixed. The cost per exchange per se varies, because the numerator, again, like I mentioned, is fixed, which is coming from the MC budget. Quarter by quarter, every amount is fixed. The more exchanges you do, which is the denominator increases, the more you do, the lesser you pay, because if you're dividing 1 lakh by 10, and if you're dividing 1 lakh by 100, obviously 1 lakh by 100 is going to be lesser. So then essentially that's how the cost per exchange is on a very simple way calculated. Cool. Like I said, the recon comes from the MC budget in itself, which is the MC budget has 4 parameters, which is the affiliation fee, administration, national services, investments, right? So the affiliation fee, like I said, is fixed every quarter for every LC. The admin budget is then 60% borne by the MC and 40% comes from the LCs. National services are 100% borne by the LCs. Investments are borne 50-50 by the MCLC. Cool. So this amount is my mistake. It's not the 20, 20, 30, 25, 25. It has been changed. So guys, apologies for that. Like I said, as per ISEC India's budget, LC share of contributions taken is down. It contains 40% of admin, 50% of expenses, 100% of national services, excluding the PM budget, excluding the membership investments. Again, like I mentioned, it's realizations for ICX and approvals for OGX. Cool. Investments done. What are exactly investments? Investments done by ISEC India to grow the network and increase operations is 50% by LCs, 50% by MC. For example, examples of investments are outgoing seeds or incoming seeds, printing and publication, alumni events. Essentially, any investment that the MC is doing into the network to grow operations is coming from our investment budget. National services expenses for services carried out by ISEC India for LCs helps in improving productivity in operations, aligning LCs to MC. This is 100% borne by LCs because essentially these are national services that we are providing out of our way to the LCs. National conferences, regional conferences, leads, information management, summits, university relations, marketing and PR costs, digital experience, growth innovation. So any per se national services are ads that we're running, our digital systems that we're creating, conferences that we're hosting, leads that we're delivering, summits, all these things that we are essentially giving back to the network are essentially 100% paid by the entity in itself. Affiliation fee, like I mentioned, is fixed, is capped, but then for you guys who are interested, it's extremely detailed in calculation. So, I mean, I wouldn't recommend going over this right now, but if you are extremely curious, you can obviously reach out to your predecessor or your VP's F and they will be able to explain to you more in detail of affiliation itself. I'm going to quickly have to push through so we can address more questions. I want to give more space for your questions and more space for sharing of resources. So if you're okay with that, I will quickly budge. Again, TM and TL fee, it comes from the MC budget. So the MC has a specific budget wherein we are investing X amount of money into the membership. And then that is divided by the number of members we have. So as how much per member pays. So that's how it's calculated. So all of these things put together then come up to be the amount that essentially we pay to the MC. And the more exchanges we do, the lesser amount, like I said, we pay. If you guys have any doubts with regards to the recon model, you always can check out the YouTube link. I'm just going to try adding the link at the end of the call in itself. I will just quickly share all the resources with you as well. But you can always check out the YouTube link for any doubts that you have with regards to the financial model of ISEC India. Cool. Again, this is again a repetition. Affiliation, like I mentioned, is the amount that we pay to AI. Administration, which is basically the running cost of the MCSL, the MC salaries, office renovation. These things, 60% are paid by ISEC India, 40% are paid by the LCs. Cool. Quickly moving on to questions. I am aware that some resources are yet going to be shared, so I would love to take 20-25 minutes as much as we can for questions, and I will then obviously share some resources with you guys once we're done with all the questions. So yeah, feel free to drop in your questions, guys. This is where you start typing. All right, Suresh Samgandhi says, I understood sustainability level 0 and 1, but not 2 onwards. All right, Suresh, so how sustainability, we'll go one question by one question, guys. So we've taken 3 questions now, we will progress slowly. Suresh, it's important to understand that, sustainability level 0 is like, I'm sure you understand, just to quickly mention for everyone else, that is when your direct income from the product is more than the direct expense. For example, if I am getting rupees 100 for every exchange I do, and if I'm spending rupees 120 on every single exchange in delivering that exchange, then it does not make sense because I'm level 0 because my expense is more than my income. Now, what is exactly level 1 sustainable? Direct income, which is essentially the money that I'm getting directly from the product to my bank account, is more than the direct expense for the product in itself. For example, paying recon. I know that I have to pay a certain amount of royalty fee on every single exchange I do to the MC, and that's my direct expense. So if, for example, I have indirect expenses, which is regards to marketing or BD, all of these things are proportionately split. For example, delivering, if I spent 5,000 rupees on BD in that quarter, and I delivered 10 exchanges, so how much of this 5,000 is affecting the 10 exchanges I've done? So essentially, that is an indirect cost in delivering that expense that I've incurred. So sustainability level 2 is when your direct expenses and your indirect expenses both put together are less than your direct income. So I will definitely share a sustainability based or a finance standards based resource with you by the end of this call, and that will per se explain it again detail for you again. So, but just for your understanding, that's how sustainability is calculated. Cool. What exactly is done in reporting? Hi. So reporting is essentially a finance standards as well, and is also the auditing that we give to ISEC India. So reporting essentially means is reporting the financial processes, financial stance, amount of exchanges you've done, or finances or current financial state of the LC to either your EB, your MB, or your GB members. So reporting the progress of the budget execution or the finance standards implementation or things like that will come per se under reporting to the different stakeholders that you do. So it's extremely important that we are creating reports, because I can obviously just go out there and say, hey, this is my BOCC, and that's not essentially reporting. Reporting is creating a week by week or a month by month report of, hey, in this month, this is the progress that we made. These are the bottlenecks that we had, la, 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 la. And reporting that comes on with regards to the MC is your audits that you submit every month. So you are submitting your budget, how much money you made, how much expense you made, what sort of expenses you made, where did these expenses go, a whole lot of questions that come on the reporting form. So that's exactly the two reportings that happen either on an LC level and on an MC level as well. Cool. How does finances for an expansion entity differ from an LC? Akshat, all right. So Akshat, just to explain to you how finances run on an expansion level, finances run very similar to how finances run on an LC level, because the idea is the fact that these expansion entities will have one finance TL or one finance responsible in that entity who's directly responding and reporting to the VPF. So essentially, the VPF is taking reporting from the expansion entity in itself, and all transaction if for every entity need to go through the parent LC. So essentially, the VPF is still monitoring on and governing and controlling the accounts or the finances even for the expansion. Essentially, that person has a person in charge over there who's in charge of just reporting, hey, we've got so many approvals, these are the payment proofs, this is what exactly has happened, just ensure you're updating the budget, or just ensure you're marking these payments up, because as a VPF, you are not quite sure when this or where this payment came from, so you essentially have someone in the expansion just reporting the finances to, but at the end of the VPF controls and makes all decisions regarding finance in the expansion, which is investing into the expansion, feasibility of visits in accordance or in relation with the VP expansions and the LCP, understanding the expansion budget that my expansions are going to do so many exchanges. So then I'm expecting so much income from the expansion and I need to invest so much. So the VPF at the end of the day still monitors and governs the entire expansion side of these things as well. So that's not too much of a difference in how finances of an expansion entity differ from an LC. Cool. Komal, what is the criteria for reserve? All right, Komal. So there is a very specific criteria that's mentioned on the compendium for reserves as well. I mean, you can obviously go through that. It's explicitly mentioned that you need to maintain a certain amount. So I will explain to you not the criteria in itself. I will explain to you why exactly we have the reserves as a concept, because like I said, reserves are the extra surplus funds that you are obviously maintaining in case of any future wrongdoing, any case of potential situation where you might need extra money as a savings essentially. And how exactly it's calculated is important to understand that my potential risk is obviously based on how much I estimate my expenses are going to be. So the idea of the reserve is that if tomorrow my exchange stops, if tomorrow I have not 1 rupee that comes in from exchanges, how long will my LC survive? So essentially the timeline is that I obviously need to have 6 months of my admin expenses, 6 months of my team and LD expenses, 2 months of my operational expenses, right? So the logic is that I obviously have a total budget of, for example, if it's 10 lakhs, right, operational budget of the year, I understand that I need 2 months of that. So 10 lakhs essentially is divided, or 12 lakhs is then essentially divided by 12. That means I have an average of 1 lakh per month. This average amount is not exactly on the budget. And then I need to understand that before I do some sort of crisis management, before things go south, I need to have 2 months of operational expenses. So the formula is explicitly mentioned on the compendium itself. So you can obviously go through that, understand what exactly is the criteria. But the idea is that you need to sustain your running cost of the LC, giving back to your members and operations, even though nothing happens. Obviously, this is a very adverse case situation, but that's the principle behind what exactly is the criteria for reserve. Cool. So, I mean, that is, again, I've answered the question. Can you go more insights on reserves? Suraj, what exactly comes under direct and indirect costs, right? So all your BD, PR, marketing, and TM expenses are indirect. All your direct product expenses like accommodation or marketing for that, marketing for OGX or a recon, all of those are direct expenses. Suraj also asked, do you think it's investing on incoming seeders is a good option? I mean, honestly, this is something more of an MC strategy. But yes, if you are an LLC that can afford a particular finance for getting an incoming seed, it doesn't make sense for you just to get a seed just for your LLC. But seed is a very good opportunity for a lot of LLCs that in ISEC India to invest and grow their operations. So it's definitely a good option. I'm just not quite sure if it's if your question is just to invest in your particular LC seat, because then that you should more or less look at an outgoing seed or incoming seed also is a good idea, but not just specifically for your LC, because we have seeders that are anyway happening from the MC side in itself. But if you're an LC that can afford to send someone on a seed to then promote your LC, then yeah, that's for sure something that you can do. All right. Sarge asks how a VPF JD differs from a finance manager. Honestly, Sarge, if you go through the job description, yeah, or if you go to the job description that's mentioned earlier in the different the slides ahead, I've mentioned explicitly what the job description of VPF is. Finance manager is essentially more or less just responsible for that product and is responsible for the finances, or responsible for the tracking of what exactly is happening in that product and what exactly the financial situation is in terms of tracking the payments, tracking receivables, legal archives for the product, reimbursements handling. So essentially, it's very narrow, very just technical or very clerical in terms of what for the product. But as a VPF is for the entire LC, you need to execute budgetation, strategy, policy, governance. These things are extremely different. So if you go through the job description of VPF, which is attached above, you will for sure be able to understand the difference. Cool. Last question. What all? That's not the last question. If you guys have more questions, please drop them down. We still have 10 more minutes for questions. So I'm just going to read Suraj's question here. What all things I should be prepared with for EB interview with respect to finance? A strong VPF interview for an EB position is obviously understanding it's extremely important to have a conversation with your VPF right now to understand the current stance of your LC, understand where exactly is it that you currently stand in your LC and what exactly is the way forward for LC. Understanding what went right in terms of the budget, what went right in terms of the actuals of the budget, what went right in terms of the reserves, how much money did you add, how much debt do you have as an entity. It's extremely important that you're completely aware of what happened in your particular LC. So you should definitely use the space between now and your interview to have these conversations and get onboarded. And the other thing that works extremely well is to be extremely technically sound in the different things, which is, for example, what is a budget? What are finance standards? What does it mean to be a VPF? What are the different things that you'll have to do? What sort of tracking mechanisms do you have? How are you going to track products? What are the MOSs that you have that I've already mentioned? What are the key performances? So you need to be completely aware of, understanding that, hey, this is what these things mean. And because every KPI, every MOS is then backtracked to either a budget or a finance standards, or internal liability tracker, or different tools and mechanisms. So you need to obviously be on point and onboarded with these trackers and mechanisms as well. That is more or less the things that you need to know before your interview, man. Jay says, any suggestions while making your plan? Cool. So your plan for a VPF comes down to two things, right? Which is essentially your financial planning, your financial management. So your plan essentially works, like I said, extremely important to understand where you're coming from in a current reality, where you are right now is more or less going to define what exactly you want to do or what exactly you want to go ahead with. So your plan should very, very, very be rooted in where you're currently from. And your plan should also obviously include where exactly is it that you want to see your LC. For example, if you're an entity in debt, how do you plan on coming out of debt? How many exchanges you need to do? How much income are you going to have? How are you going to cut your expenses to come out of debt? If you're an LC that's doing financially, not so well, you're lacking behind with 1 month of payment on the internal liability. What sort of plan do you have in the first 6 months to mitigate the risk where you are obviously systematically breaking down this debt of, say, X amount over the next 2 invoice cycles that are not putting your current plans in progress? For example, you don't just cut off all expenses because, hey, we have a pending amount, but you are systematically then as a VPF tracking and making a part of your year plan what exactly it is that I need to do to mitigate these risks and ensure that every month, because you cannot afford to further increase the debt, right? So your plans obviously need to be rock solid in that month's invoice has to be cleared in the next subsequent month. But at the end of the day, my invoice is not just the amount that I see. My invoice is also our amount of carry forward. So your plan is extremely crucial as to your current financial stance. And for example, if you're a big LC, your plans obviously need to include the KPIs and MOSs that I already mentioned, and what exactly do you want to do. For example, my core performance needs to be 0.7. My debt ratio needs to be minimum of 1.1, 1.2, 1.4, whatever it is. My budget needs to have a minimum 80% execution. And how every month these things are going to change, and how exactly will they contribute to the end picture. For example, I want to leave my bank balance with 6 lakhs and no dues and increase in reserves. So a big LC, for example, LC that's doing financially sound already is finance standards. I need to have at least a 95 to 98 or 900% in terms of execution of finance standards, right? So that's something that you need to do. And also what you also need to keep in mind is reserves. How much money do I want to contribute, add on to my reserves? So the MOSs that I explicitly mentioned in the JD are something that you can keep a part of your year plan. Cool. Can you give me insights on how to make the crisis report and what are the things included? So Harsh, I mean, I'm not quite sure I understand the definition of what crisis report that you're talking about. So if you can just further elaborate on that, I can then answer that question. Cool. Do we have any questions? We have a lot of people attending the call. Are you guys still here? Adding the amount of reserves is on us, or it has done by formula. The amount you add to reserves is, so we have something called the membership check, which requires the LCs to maintain a certain amount of reserves. The LCs need to maintain certain compliant reserves, and anything above that, because for example, if I'm not wrong, about 20 LCs right now in secondary are meeting reserve criteria. So anything that happens above that is completely up to the choice of a VPF, and that's a measure of success that they set for themselves through the course of time. So yes, there is a formula that is telling you the minimum amount that needs to be in your reserves at all time, and once you cross that threshold, which most LCs already have, so you essentially, it comes down to what sort of financial planning you do at the end of the day. Cool. How does tracking of finance standards happen? Cool. That's what your name says. Finance standards is essentially the 6 standards that we have, and the finance standards are being tracked by the reporting form that's released every month by the MC, which are part of the audits. So the reporting form has a lot of these questions, which are depending, for example, do you have internal financial policies? If you click yes, then you have 1 point. If you, for example, how many ECB cases do you have? If you have more than 1 case, that's a 0. Do all your EPs have insurance? If it's no, it's a 0. If these scores, then you may add and you get a percentage, and then you are able to objectively put how much, what sort of financial standards compliance do you have. Cool. Suryansh says, what kind of events can specifically focus on to get the finance strong of an entity? All right, Suryansh. It's extremely important to understand the objectives of every event, and you should obviously synergize with the VPBD as to understand that what exactly is the role of a VPBD. As a VPF, it's extremely important for you to hold your VPBD accountable to the amount of secondary source of income that person is promising to bring into the LC, right? So at any given point in time, you need to obviously hold your VPBD accountable to the fact that, hey, as I can express that we expect 5 or 6 lakhs of profits from you, and what they do with regards to these events then comes down to the VPBD. But for example, if you're talking about, just to give you an example, a YSF is very unlikely, unless explicitly done in very specific cases, not going to raise more than 1.5 lakhs profits, right? Whereas, for example, something like a marathon is something that's more sellable, something that's more cash heavy, can essentially give you a profit of 2, 3, 4, 5 lakhs also. Whereas something like an ASD or a WLL is not going to be able to give you money. So it's important to understand what your entity needs at that point in time and what the financial objectives are of that entity, because not every event can be done with the objective of branding. Events need to be done with the fact that they need to raise secondary source of income. So as VPF, you need to pioneer that, push that conversation in your LC to understand that, hey, these are things that I need to do. These are things financially required for me right now. So yeah, that's how you can understand what sort of events you can do to improve the finances of your LC. Cool. Div also says, considering a few of the finance standards aren't tangible, so there is no way of tracking them on an LC level. So most of the finance standards, or actually all 6 of the finance standards, have a numerical score that we've been analyzing the LCs for the last 6 months on. So that's something that you can obviously tangibly talk about, because I can share access with you guys about the finance standards and the different questions that we have, and that will more or less explain to you. You guys can actually reach out to your VPs F who are then filling these questions, who will be able to give you examples of what exactly these questions are. How do you prefer collecting documents, digitally or some other way on LC level? As soon as how I would recommend that you collect documents on a local level is obviously with the likes of GDPR coming in, you need to obviously explicitly mention to your EPs that you are going to be collecting the documents for the purpose of a particular thing or for a duration of a particular period. Essentially, what I recommend is that you obviously upload these documents on Legal Archives, which is the auditing for operations anyways. So yes, for sure, you need to maintain these documents digitally. At the same time, with consent of your you can just probably add it in the clause that you're talking to people saying, I am going to be keeping a physical copy of this in my office for any purpose for a period of 1 year or for a period of 2 years for that matter. So digital is for sure required, but manual is again something that some LCs do, which is recommended as the right way forward. Cool. We still have 5 to 10 more minutes for any questions that you guys might have before I quickly start sharing resources that you guys need to be aware of. What about the other people on the call? Do we not have any other questions? Can you guys hear me? Or do you guys have any questions? I see 5 people are typing. Okay, all right. Nope, that was clear. All right, perfect, Suraj. All right, someone else? No questions as of now. All right. Cool. Sahil asks, okay, wait, there's one thing on it. So Harsh said crisis support in terms of operations to make legal documents strong. All right, Sahil, Sarsh, if I'm not wrong, you're talking about the legal compliance, the number of how well or often you're calculating or how much of you're collecting your legal documents. If that's your question, what I would recommend is you do a very simple analysis of how many documents are collected, how many documents are uploaded on legal archives, and as a risk, for example, if there are 10 documents that need to be updated for a particular EP and there are only 7 documents, then there's a 70% compliance with that particular EP and there's a 30% chance that there's a risk exposed there, right? So how I would simply, if that's what your definition of crisis report is, then what you can do is start preparing these daily reports or monthly reports of the fact that, hey, these are the documents missing. And then you can obviously understand and draw a pattern and draw a trend saying, hey, if I have, for example, passport copies that I'm not getting from my EPs, then it's obviously a mistake from my end where I have not per se gone and collected. Or for example, if I'm not getting IELTS, then for example, my operations team leader is losing the IELTS. So you can obviously draw inferences first and foremost is to plot down the kind of documents you're collecting and not collecting, and understand from that and draw inferences and prepare and tell them that, hey, this is what the legal exposure is. These are documents that we don't have, and you can just get this from legal archives data. Yeah. Sal asks, how do you keep the EB accountable for the targets that they give? Sal, this is something that you will obviously have to drive down as a VPF in accordance with your LCP, and understand that a VPF as a VPF, that is your role. You need to hold them accountable. So it explicitly comes down to making the budget very contingent, making expenses very contingent, that, hey, if you achieve certain targets is when you will get certain expenses. When you do a certain thing is when you get a certain thing, because we cannot per se just go ahead and spend money, execute things. Obviously, we find the fine line between being extremely strict and being extremely lenient as well, where we understand that, okay, the situation in some cases can be forgiven, where we will choose to make a certain expense or choose to forego this. But as a VPF, you need to be extremely black and white objective, and obviously get your LCP on board with the fact that you need to hold the team accountable. For example, if they don't meet their targets, these expenses cannot be made. A membership investment cannot be made. A conference cannot be done. These things are directly contingent, relevant to the income that your LCs are getting. Because if they are not getting this income and you're still spending that, then you're taking a very poor financial decision, and that's going to be completely on you as a VPF. Cool. Rakshit, can you explain again about reserve criteria? Rakshit, I have already mentioned this twice in the call. I will definitely share the compendium where it's explicitly mentioned the reserve criteria in itself, and you can definitely read that there. Is the budget of the expansion entity moderated by the LC? Yes, obviously, I have answered this question as well. The budget of the expansion entity is not monitored, but controlled, I would say. Monitored is again something secondary, but it's solely controlled directly by the LC VPF. Cool. Divyas, okay, can you explain the FTF in detail and how it works? So the FTF essentially is a finance task force on the EB level, where the VPF is the chair of the finance task force along with the LCP and the VPPD in most cases, because this is done because we understand that, these are the people who are handling and governing the money of the organization. So the FTF is essentially like a task force that meets every month to evaluate the financial position, because that's also in a way to hold the VPF accountable. And I understand that at EBMs, we're not able to just completely solely just talk about money, solely just talk about the finances. So FTF essentially is that space where you're in-depth, detailed analyzing sustainability, profitability, finance standards, budget execution, core performance, debt ratio, all these things that we've been talking about so far in a very detailed manner as to what's going right, what's going wrong. So it's a very comprehensive meeting that is happening with the LCP, with the VPF and the VPBD, or any other person that the LCP chooses on as the FTF, but essentially it should be the VPBD because these are the people who are governing and making these decisions. So your budgets need to be proposed to the FTF. You need to be sending your investment more requests. For example, other EB members should be sending investment requests to the FTF. So the FTF is something that you make out of it. What exactly is as a body that you do as a decision-making financial body in the entity itself. Do you think it's feasible for a VPF to do finance and work a job looking in terms of health of the LC and EB? Sharat, honestly, I mean, this is a question that it's definitely I would say it's not feasible, but it's definitely not recommended that you do having a job outside, because the VPF does require you to do or be available a lot more than a regular VP. So I will not explicitly say that it's something that is a deal breaker, but it's extremely recommended that you're doing just the VPF. I mean, it's not like we've seen people in the past who've done VPF and had job outside as well. But my recommendation, my personal suggestion is it doesn't work out well for both people. That's it. Cool. What should be the percentage income of operations? Again, like I said, the core performance, which is globally accepted, is 0.7, which means 70% of all income needs to come from operations. Anything less than that is extremely unhealthy and a big risk for the LC. Yep. Cool. Anyone else? Any other questions? We have exactly 4 more minutes for questions. Anyone else, guys? Can you guys hear me? Can the others, other than the people asking questions, reply if you guys can hear me? Yes. I see a lot of people on the call. For example, Abhishek, Anusha, Arada, Eris, Divesh, Gaurav, Jared, Jay, Pooja, Rakshit, Saharsh, Sahil, Sahil, Satyam, Shubham, Somasudra, Suryan, Yashika. All right, perfect. You guys don't have any other questions, or you guys have any questions that you want me to share with you? Yes, the presentation will be available offline after the call. I will be sharing this with your current VPs. So you can, as soon as this call is done in the next 2 hours, reach out to them and they will be able to share with you a bunch of resources that I feel are extremely important for you guys to know. All right, we have 3 minutes, 2.5 minutes before we can get done with the questions. I mean, just to quickly understand how many LCs are here, if you guys can just reply with the number with the LCs you guys are from. I mean, so I can understand which LC has. Okay, so Suraj is from Navi Mumbai. Okay. Easy, guys, easy. Cool. We have Navi Mumbai, Pune, Mumbai, Jodhpur, Chandigarh, Ahmedabad, Surat, Hyderabad, Bangalore. Hey, Pooja, you've been announced as VPF, right? Oh, okay. Congratulations. We have a VPF here. Bhopal, Ahmedabad, Aisim Dhanbad. Okay. All right. Perfect. So we have a fairly decent attendance from different LCs. All right. Cool. Last 2 minutes, guys. Any other final questions? I'm just going to quickly drop my number here. You guys can reach out to me for any queries that you guys have. That's my number there, guys. You can reach out to me over WhatsApp, and I'll also drop in my mail ID. Cool. I would prefer that you guys reach out to me via mail. Write me a mail about anything you need so I can attach any resources I feel are extremely important as well for you guys. And yeah, please feel free to reach out to me by mail. And if I'm not replying over mail over a day, then you can reach out to me on my WhatsApp. Cool. Sahil asks, how do you create new tracking mechanisms for better ROI tracking? All right, Sahil. The most simplest way of creating an ROI tracking is essentially just putting on a tracker a different source of investment that you made and the amount of investment you made and how much of money you're getting back from it. It's a very simple calculation. You just need to divide one amount by the other amount. So you don't need to explicitly calculate or create some sort of a very detailed ROI tracker in itself. You just need to put down this data on a particular sheet and automatically calculate that. For starters, I mean, there is definitely a lot of scope as to how we can go about an ROI thing, and that's something I'm looking to nationalize from the MC level as well. But just for your purpose, you can just do that from basic sheet. All right. Last question, guys. One final question. Who wants to ask one final question before I quickly move into resource sharing? All right. One final question. No one else wants to ask. People from... I haven't heard anyone. Okay. We had fairly decent people. Pooja, I don't think you will be able to get the most out of this webinar because this is essentially not a VPF webinar. This is more or less understanding why you apply to VPF. But congratulations once again. Just do definitely reach out to me on WhatsApp. I would love to have a conversation with you and take things forward from there. But congratulations. Yeah. Anyone else? One final question, guys. Quickly, let's move on. Hello, people. One final question. All right. I don't see a question. Going once, going twice. Something on IT returns. I mean, like I mentioned, Sahil, we are not liable to pay tax. We don't have a GST number as well because we are not required to by the law. We do file our IT returns every year, and for every single LC, because of the accounting and reporting you do every single month to the MC. So we have an accountant that sits in the office here right behind me. This is his place where he sits and he accounts for ISEC India, and then we file these returns every year to the government, the income tax officials, and then it's a very simple process that way. Cool. That's about it. Thank you very much. Oh, okay, we have one question. Does being a VPF make you feel detached from the LC? Oh my God, that's a very, very heavy question you asked me. No, buddy. I genuinely do not believe that being a VPF makes you feel detached from the LC. If at all, it makes you feel more attached because you are in the prime position to make decisions and strategic. +1 J +1 for what? Is that a question or +1 1? Okay, there's a lot of +1s coming. Okay, wait. +1 for what, guys? What are you guys asking a +1 for? Same question. Was about to ask. Okay. Cool, guys. I mean, this is a very informal question that you guys have asked me. But okay, guys, this is coming out of personal experience, right? That I don't quite +5,500. Funny. All right. I personally do not believe that a VPF is very detached to the LC. This is something that's extremely weird or different for me to be aware that a lot of you have this opinion. I mean, I would love for some clarity for you guys about this, but a VPF is most definitely not detached. I feel he is the most attached person to the LC because you are in the position of making the decisions, strategizing, cooperating, and VPF needs to be aware of every single thing that's happening in the LC. VPF needs to be there, available for every single thing in and across the LC, right? So I feel the VPF is the most attached with the LC. I mean, I feel that you guys are coming from this space because of how you have seen VPSF in the past react or behave or put certain ideas forward, which is not the case. I feel like the VPSF have, in my opinion, the biggest role. And I, as a VPF, was extremely attached to my LC, to the different products, because no other role requires you to be aware of what exactly is happening in every other portfolio. So I would strongly disagree with the fact that a VPF is detached from the LC as such. And I mean, I would be an extremely strong promoter of the fact that VPF is the most attached rather to the entity. But yeah, that's a very weird question that you guys have. But I'm glad you guys asked that because I would not want you guys feeling that way. +1 for the question. That's a lot of you asking +1 for that question. Bloody hell. All right. Perfect. That's about it. Thank you very much, guys. I have more or less exhausted my time here. Hopefully see you at NLS. For sure, Saharsh. Hopefully see you too at NLS. At the same time, I'm more or less done here. I will, just before everyone leaves, please keep in mind, I will be creating a resource booklet drive kind of link. I will be sharing it with your VP's F. Or I will be sharing it with on mail that you guys can reach out to me. But you guys, please do reach out to your VPSF and use this resource material because it has a lot of definitions, sustainability, reserve, company, all these things are mentioned there. Instagram. What Instagram? What is Instagram, buddy? You want me to share my Instagram? You want me to share my Instagram ID with you? Is that what you're asking? The file. Okay, all right. I can share the file on Instagram. Perfect. That works as well. Cool. Great, guys. I will share it with the Finance Commission and on Instagram as well. Guys, please feel free to go ahead and do that. Yeah. All right.
my Instagram ID. Okay, that's weird. That's new. My Instagram ID is Suraj Bajaj 5, guys. If you really want to connect with me on Instagram, feel free to do that. But yeah, more or less that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you for attending. Stay tuned for the output uh on the Instagram ID and on with the current VPSF. Yeah. All right. Perfect. Thank you very much. Take care. See you guys. All the best, EB applications. Hope to see a lot of you at NLS. Shut up. Bye bye.